Intense pain, life interruptions, misunderstandings, and prejudice. Migraine headaches are the cause of untold suffering for millions of women. What causes this debilitating condition and what can be done to prevent it? Today on W The Women Show, we're going to talk about new hope for migraine sufferers, some revolutionary therapies and medications that may help many of them return to a normal life. Hello, I'm Chanel Hart. Welcome to this special edition of W The Women Show, Women and Migraine Headaches. Today, I'd like to introduce our viewers to Suzanne Simons, Executive Director of the National Headache Foundation in Chicago. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you for having me, Chanel.
Could you please define for us what are migraine headaches?
Migraine tend to be a one-sided, oftentimes throbbing headache. It may be accompanied by nausea and or vomiting, sensitivity to light and or sound, and usually there's a level of disability that goes with migraine headaches. And the majority of migraine sufferers are women. 3 times as many women as men experience migraine.
My gosh, and how do migraine headaches differentiate from other kinds of headaches?
Well, tension type is probably the most common, and that tends to be sort of a generalized hat band sensation or maybe pain at the back of the head where the head and neck meet, and oftentimes an over-the-counter product will take care of that headache. Sometimes they are chronic and people need to see their healthcare provider for diagnosis. But there's also something called cluster headache, and 90% of cluster sufferers are men. They tend to be called suicide headaches because the pain is so debilitating. It tends to be one-sided. There's tearing in the eye, nasal congestion, and the eyelid may droop, and the pain is very, very intense.
Sounds awful. Now, do men ever actually have migraines?
Men do get migraines, and that's the interesting thing is oftentimes they may have headaches, but they don't realize they're suffering from migraine because they see migraine as being a woman's disease. So men do get migraine, and they really should talk to their healthcare providers about headaches if they experience them regularly.
That's really interesting. We said that migraines affect women much more often than men. So how can this condition affect women's lives?
Migraines can impact them at home, at work, and even in their leisure activities. And so many women miss out on family vacations and birthdays and important things that enrich your life, those important family celebrations. At work, sometimes they're passed over for promotions because they're viewed as being perhaps less dependable. And a lot of times, women don't take the time for themselves and the things that they enjoy because they focus on those other things that they need to get done. So they miss out on their hobbies and sports and things that they might enjoy participating in.
Things.
Absolutely.
Well, to understand this a little bit more, we're going to take a look at a woman who has been suffering from migraines most of her life. Let's see. Shannon Minder has lived in the peaceful island community of Port Orchard, Washington, with her husband for 9 years. She started getting migraines at age 15. Her mom took her to doctors, but they didn't know what was wrong or what to give her.
Test after test, I don't even remember, all sorts of different medications, and one after another, and they didn't help. Migraines can take a terrible toll on your life. You try to go to college and you have these terrible migraines all the time. You can't function like a normal person. You can't go to class all the time like you need to. You end up dropping out because you can't study or perform like a normal person should. So that's pretty devastating.
In her early 20s, Shannon's headaches became even more frequent. She had them almost every day. Finally, she went to a Seattle neurologist, Dr. Sylvia Lucas, who specializes in headaches.
Does your medication work as well for the headaches around your menstrual period as it does at other times of the month?
No, it doesn't.
Dr. Sylvia Lucas is clinical professor of neurology and rehabilitation medicine at the University of Washington. Dr. Lucas gets migraine headaches herself, but that isn't why she got into the field. She started this headache clinic because she realized there were so few specialists available to the millions of American migraine sufferers.
I think having migraines helps you be a little more empathetic to your patients. For example, someone said to me one day, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but when I turn my head during a migraine, I think my brain is sloshing around, and you know, inside you'd go, yeah, that sounds nuts." But if you have a migraine, you know that everything that normally we suppress, for example, we don't feel spinal fluid moving around in our head. we don't feel our carotid artery pulsing in our ear because our brain suppresses that. But in a migraine, it doesn't suppress anymore. So the throbbing that you hear during a headache is actually the carotid artery. And when you move your head and it makes the pain worse, that's because you can feel spinal fluid moving around in your head. So it's like the gain of every sensation out there, whether it's light or sound or your movement, is suddenly ratcheted up. We think that headache probably starts in the brain, and the trigger is there. It's almost like a light switch. So you get the perfect storm, and it might be you had a glass of wine the other night, you didn't sleep very well, it's 2 days before your menstrual period, you've got an exam next week, and boom, you get the headache. And when that light switch goes on, something happens in the brain involving what we call the trigeminal vascular system, and that's a way of explaining nerves that innervate the lining of the brain and the blood vessels right next to them that release these neuropeptides that basically move over to the blood vessels, and they make them swell, they become leaky. So really, the way to think of a migraine is really like an inflammation. So a lot of times I tell my patients, well, it's like you had 100 bee stings on the lining around your brain. And then the pain of the migraine is felt when that signal goes right back into the brain, into the part of our brain that perceives pain.
The headache diary Shannon was asked to write helped her understand how often she was really having the headaches, a fact she had tried to ignore.
So it's been very enlightening, because you know you have a lot of migraines, but you don't realize that you have them 3/4 of the time. Like, that's just unbelievable.
Today, Shannon is on a preventative medication, a type of anti-seizure drug. She also depends on a drug in the triptan class, which treats acute migraine attacks.
They've helped. They've taken the edge off. What's nice is the Maxalt has come out with what's called a Maxalt melt. So you can just put that on your tongue and it melts. And so you don't have, which is very nice because you can take it anywhere. If you're in the car, if you're out somewhere, you don't have to worry about having water, or if you're at your desk working, you can just pop it on your tongue and nobody knows you're taking it.
The migraine-specific drugs absolutely can have life-changing characteristics to them. I can speak to that myself. I use Maxalt, and the reason I use it is because it allows me to go on with my work and see patients and not have side effects. So, I'm certainly not falling asleep in front of them, and, we can carry on a conversation, and I think I'm reasonably, lucid. But it works, and that's the bottom line. It takes the headache away.
Shannon still gets migraine headaches, but instead of disabling her for days at a time, they are now manageable.
A lot of times it does help, and you can, instead of ending up on the bathroom floor, you can muddle your way through the day and at least make it, even if it's halfway, you can make it part of the way. Sometimes you can't, and sometimes your coworkers have to drive you home, which is very, very nice, but most of the times you can make it through the day. And that's a wonderful, wonderful improvement. That really, really is.